Hi, Lloyd Chapman here with American Small Business League, another episode of Memory Lane. So back in 2002, when I exposed the fact that Fortune 500 firms and some of the biggest companies on earth were getting federal small business contracts, the GAO did an investigation into that, and I testified before Congress, and it came out that there were 5,300 and something large business getting small business contracts. The Associated Press wrote a story about it, ran all across the country, and I thought, that was over. Well, the SBA began to try to cover that up. And they said it was the result of miscoding, computer glitches, and simple human error. That was their excuse. That was 18 years ago. They're still using that same excuse. So here's what's funny. So on a government contract, excuse me, you're either small or large, right? Small or large, like left or right, up, down, black, white, heads or tails, right? So they said that it was just simple human error that that these contracts have been miscoded as small business contracts. All right, well, let's take a look at that. Section 16D of the Small Business Act says if you misrepresent yourself as a small business to illegally land federal small business contracts, the penalty is up to 10 years in prison. So on a government contract, I think there's probably, let's just say there's, 50, 60, 70, things to fill out. But there's only one that you can go to prison for 10 years for getting it wrong. And it's just interesting that there's so many errors in that one spot. So here's a question that no journalist in history has ever asked anybody about the SBA. So if every year, I think we're into our 18th, 19th year now of large businesses getting federal small business contracts, billions and billions, right? And it's miscoding and computer glitches and simple human error. Well, if it's just random errors, it'd be like flipping a quarter, right? Half the time it lands tails and half the time it would land heads, right? So if people are making mistakes in that field that says it whether it's small or large, it would be equally distributed. Half the time a contract to a small business would be miscoded as a large business contract, and half the time a contract to a large business would be miscoded as a small business contract. There would be an equal amount, right? But we don't have that pattern for 18 years. The pattern we have for 18 years is that the miscoding, the computer glitches, the simple human error always seems to report contracts to large businesses as small business contracts. The thing that drives me nuts is not one journalist in 18 years has ever asked anybody from the SBA to explain that. And I've written countless, press releases and blogs and things, trying to get people to do that. And no one will do that. It's amazing. As far as I can tell, as I can remember, no one's ever interviewed the head of the SBA about any of this ever. So it's been 18 years since I convinced the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, to launch the first investigation into fraud in federal small business contracting programs, and I testified before Congress. And I don't think anyone's ever sat down with the head of the SBA and asked her a question about these programs in 18 years. I'll tell you something interesting. I don't think that any journalist can speak to anyone at the SBA. Right now it's October of 2020, and I've got a lawsuit against the SBA in federal court to try to force them to release the names of all the firms that got PPP PPP loans, and they're saying no comment. It's amazing that of all the agencies in government, the Small Business Administration, a little tiny Small Business Administration, can get away with telling journalists no comment. But you look at it. For 18 years, I challenge anyone to find one journalist that's ever interviewed the head of the SBA and had her explain why every year for 18 years, hundreds of billions in federal contracts that by law should go to small businesses are diverted to Fortune 500 firms, and the SBA has claimed for 18 consecutive years that it's miscoding, computer glitches, simple human error, and no one's ever called them on that. I think that's absolutely astounding. I'm Lloyd Chapman. Thanks for watching.